Hey, I'm Stephanie, and I have a theory. Most of us don't want to feel satisfied. We might say we do, we might even think we do, but when it comes down to it, the moment we feel content, something inside of us starts looking for the next thing. Case in point, a few months ago, I finally bought the Gucci bronzer that I had been eyeing for 5 years, and it was everything I hoped it would be, the most luxurious dirt I ever smeared on my face. But a couple of days ago, I saw the brand new Farrah Hamidi bronzer, and suddenly, what had once seemed so perfect suddenly seemed meh. Why is it that we lose satisfaction so quickly, even with things that we adore? What if the reason isn't just marketing? What if it goes deeper? I'm coming to realize that satisfaction is much less about what we buy and much more about how we think. So today I'll show you how this shift is dramatically changing things for me. If you're new here, welcome. We focus on what I call the Adagio mindset. It's named after a musical term meaning slow, and it's all about slowing down the pursuit of newness so that we have more time to enjoy what we already have. It's not about deprivation, and at its core, it's not even really about consumption. It's much more about getting to know ourselves better so that we know what choices will ultimately make us happier. So it's about deliberate delight. So let's talk about why satisfaction is so hard to maintain. Why does the goalpost of enough keep moving? There's a concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. And the way I understand it at a very basic level is that we adapt pretty quickly to good or bad things that happen to us. We want to focus on the good today. So let's say you're out shopping and you find this beautiful lipstick. So you decide to buy it. You bring it home and you are thrilled for a week, maybe 2, because this is your brand new shiny lipstick. But at some point, that brand new shiny lipstick becomes just your lipstick. And at that point, the excitement begins to fade. Your happiness goes back to baseline. So to jack it back up, you start looking for something else to buy. That is being on the hedonic treadmill. But I've noticed we don't just adapt to our purchases, we also adapt to the market. And when we're constantly seeing all the new options that are out there, what seemed like enough last month suddenly seems like just okay this month. And it's not because our needs or our preferences have changed, it's because our reference points have shifted. And social media makes this worse. The algorithms keep getting better at honing in on our interests, and suddenly they're showing us new products, new launches, new holy grails almost every day. At this point, it feels almost like there's a constant parade of what if there's something better for me out there just marching through my feed. But I've come to realize that the goalpost of enough isn't drifting. It's just that we're constantly looking at an entirely different playing field. Think about it. When you bought one of your favorite things, let's just say your favorite lipstick, why did it become your favorite? Sure, the color, the formula, the packaging, all of those things mattered. But I bet what really sealed the deal was probably the way it made you feel. Confident, put together, maybe beautiful, cute, powerful, whatever version of yourself you like to showcase the most. I would argue that those feelings are what made it your favorite, and those feelings don't live in the lipstick, they live in you. The product was just the spark. So when we say the goalpost of enough is moving, it's not actually that satisfaction is drifting further and further out of reach. It's more like we just kind of forget about this goalpost and we start to focus on an entirely different playing field, chasing new sparks, hoping for that same internal flame. Let's examine my recent bronzer spiral because I think it perfectly illustrates this. I had been using my Gucci bronzer for about 2 months. It was still practically brand new. It still made me feel so fancy every time I opened it. And I even got sent some extra shades by accident, so I had options. Today, I'm wearing shade 3. Then, a few days ago, the new Farrah Hamidi bronzer started popping up in my feed. It was like every single beauty influencer wanted to talk about it. And it has some distinguishing qualities that make it different than my Gucci bronzer. Everybody's claiming that it's revolutionary, and they're posting videos with thumbnails that imply that this is the best bronzer. And suddenly, my brain started doing this elaborate justification dance. Well, this new bronzer is luminous. Most of my bronzers are matte, so it must be worth buying. Or, well, this bronzer is cream to powder. All my other bronzers are either a cream or a powder, so it must be worth buying. Or, Well, everyone's talking about it, so it must be really special and worth buying. As a side note, those first two justifications could potentially be logical, but that last one in no way guarantees that I would love a product. If the beauty community has taught me one thing, it's that when a product is new and everybody's talking about it, that means absolutely nothing, even if they're all raving about it. You know it's a good product if it's old, it's been on the market for several months or maybe even several years, and people are still talking about it like that. Then it actually might be worth considering. That's actually the way it was with my Gucci bronzer. I put it on my wish list, I waited, and people kept raving about it, and I have to say, I was not disappointed. But back to the topic at hand, when I stopped and really examined what was going on with all the bronzer temptation, I realized I wasn't actually dissatisfied with my current bronzer at all. I was dissatisfied with having made a choice. Because making a choice for one thing by default means choosing against something else. Because I personally don't have the budget or the space or, quite honestly, the desire to buy all the pretty things. But marketing makes sure that we are always aware of what we're missing. The craziest part is that I could create basically a completely identical look with what I already have. I could just add a highlighter or combine my cream and powder products differently or use a luminizer. The list is long. But that would require me to engage with the products I already have instead of buying something new. And engaging triggers very different happy chemicals in the brain than buying does. Using what I have is more of a meditative activity, and that sort of thing favors serotonin. And serotonin is the deeper, slower kind of satisfaction. Buying, on the other hand, lights up the brain's reward center releasing dopamine, which is a quicker, more energizing kind of high. If we want to think about it in really simple terms, one is a slow burn, the other is a spark. Both have their place in a happy, healthy brain, but when it comes to feeling like we have enough, serotonin's where it's at. And I think this connects to an interesting fact I read about addiction. According to research, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's connection. Humans are wired to bond, and if we don't have enough connection with fellow humans, then we'll bond with things or behaviors or substances. And I think in some cases, we're training ourselves not necessarily to bond with things, but with the process of acquiring things, with the behavior of shopping. Because we'll get excited about the research, the order, the purchase, the unboxing, but then we're on to the next thing before we've even had time to really connect to what we just bought. It's almost like we're addicted to the anticipation of satisfaction rather than the satisfaction itself. And social media algorithms are optimized for this. I don't think that they care so much whether or not we actually buy the bronzer, but they definitely want us to keep wanting it because that drives clicks. The algorithm wants us to yearn for something so deeply that we keep clicking video after video until our fingers are raw. And that's the uncomfortable truth. The system will go to great lengths to keep us wanting, even if it's to our own detriment. It wants to distract us, but satisfaction requires presence. It requires us slowing down enough to actually appreciate what we already have. And to make things even tougher, presence often feels harder than purchasing. And that's just because it doesn't light up the reward center in the same way. That is a simplification, of course. Both serotonin and dopamine play important roles, but it is an easy way to explain why using what we already have feels steady, but not as starkly gratifying, while buying something new feels more like a hit of immediate goodness. That's why I'm becoming more passionate than ever about creating a little safe zone, a corner of the internet where we can say, I really wanted that bronzer, but I didn't get it. Or, I bought the bronzer, but I don't understand why. Or, I bought the bronzer and I love it. Because I want to create a space where we can celebrate our love of beautiful things while simultaneously acknowledging that that enthusiasm can also be tangled up with things like longing and impulse and identity. Marketing companies know that the moment we feel truly satisfied, we'll stop buying. So they've created entire systems to keep us just dissatisfied enough that we'll keep scrolling. They're not evil, they just have very different priorities than we do, and they are very good at their jobs, which makes it our job to recognize when we are being sold dissatisfaction packaged as aspiration. If we want to celebrate our enthusiasm for beautiful things while also guarding ourselves against the constant pressure to always want more, we have to build something different. We have to have different conversations. And you've already been helping me do that. One comment, one like, one reflection at a time. I feel like my comment section is becoming a bit of a spa for my dopamine-addled brain. But I do realize that these types of conversations can feel really vulnerable for some people, which is why I also offer a free membership over on Patreon so that we can have discussions that feel a little bit more private than the public arena that is YouTube. So I'll link that in case you'd like to join. So now we have established that there is a hedonic treadmill that many of us, myself included, are on. So how do we get off of the treadmill? How do we make enough feel enjoyable instead of limiting? First, I've started treating my existing products like they're new. I'll treat my collection like a mini Sephora and I'll throw myself wild swatch parties just so I can play with everything. And I'll experiment with different ways to apply my makeup because I've learned that the novelty isn't necessarily in the product, it's often in the way we engage with it. So if I'm constantly using it in a different context, it always manages to feel new. Second, I've made peace with letting go of things, so much so that I now pre-declutter my makeup, meaning I don't even buy it in the first place. I can admire that Farah Hamidi bronzer without buying it. I can admire the artistry, the packaging, the concept without actually owning it, just like I can admire a sunset without trying to buy it. And that was a huge shift for me because I used to feel like if I crave a product, I should strive to possess it. But back in my over-purchasing days, possessing too many things never once stopped me from craving something new on top of all of them. Yet nowadays that I'm trying to focus more on enjoying what I already have, I find that it's much easier for me to vicariously live through other people who are using that makeup and to enjoy potentially beautiful products from afar. Third, I've started asking myself, what am I actually chasing here? And usually, surprisingly, it's not the product itself. It's the feeling I think that product will give me. Maybe I think it'll make me feel rich or confident or luxurious, or it'll give me a feeling of novelty or connection to community. But here's the thing, most of those feelings are available to me right now with what I already have. I just have to take the time to use the things. In the case of the Farah Hamidi bronzer, I think I was probably chasing luxury because the way it's presented and discussed gives very luxury vibes. But if I'm being honest, every single time I look at or open this compact, it feels like the epitome of luxury. So I think I've got the luxury category covered. But you know what else I think I was seeking? A feeling of novelty. But when I really think that through, it's actually kind of absurd because if I were to buy that bronzer, by definition, within just a few days, it would no longer be a new bronzer. It would be a used bronzer. So do I really think it's worth it to pay $78 just for a very brief experience of novelty? To me, that doesn't feel worth it. And that's what makes me think maybe I'm not chasing satisfaction, or maybe it's just that I don't know how to recognize satisfaction. So let's try a little satisfaction experiment. Pick something that you own that you used to love, but that you haven't really thought about in a while. It could be a lipstick, a perfume, a piece of jewelry, shoes, anything. For the next week, use it intentionally, not just as part of your routine, but as a deliberate choice. Maybe you can build your routine or your makeup look or your outfit around that thing. If you can, take just a few seconds of extra time to notice how it feels, how it performs, what you like about it. Really rediscover it. You might find that the satisfaction has been there all along, you just weren't aware of it. I know that I've discovered that I don't need more things to be happy. I just need to pay more attention to what I already have. The goal isn't to stop wanting things. The goal is to start wanting things for the right reasons, because they genuinely add value to our lives, not because we're choosing a quick dopamine hit, just because we're unaware of how close satisfaction really is. If you try this experiment, feel free to tag me on Instagram or comment below with what you choose, because I'd love to hear what you're rediscovering. Speaking of sharing, my daily No Buy July insights are online in my free blog. So if you're interested in following this mindset more closely, I'll share the link below. So here's what I'd like you to remember. Satisfaction isn't a moving target. Oftentimes, if we can just slow down enough and be still, we can find it where we already are. The next time you feel that familiar, "Ooh, I need need that sort of feeling, I urge you to ask yourself whether you're actually interested in the product itself, or if you're chasing the feeling that you think that product will give you. And if it is a feeling you're chasing, that's a great opportunity to ask yourself if you can get that feeling from something you already own. I'm not saying we should never buy anything new for fun ever again. All I'm saying is that if we do choose to do that, we should try to do it from a place of genuine desire, not dopamine-driven urgency. Because the truth is, for those of us who are lucky enough to have our basic needs met, chances are we're already surrounded by more joy than we realize. The hard part is remembering to look for it. If any of these ideas resonated with you, I would love it if you pressed the like button because it tells me that I should make more videos like this. Next week, I'm starting a little sub-series within this Adagio Sessions playlist as a way to explore the patterns behind how we interact with our stuff. We'll begin with collecting. Why do we do it? What are we actually gathering? How to know when it's adding joy and when it's adding noise. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that, and check out this video here. Thanks so much for hanging out, and a huge thanks to all of my Club Adagio members, including my lovely Adagio angels, for helping me build this space. I'll see you next week. Until then, I hope we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.